I'd like to call to order the meeting of Economic Matters on Thursday, July 12th at 3 p.m. Um, First, the only items on the agenda are appointments and reappointments to committees. We have 3 committees or commissions that we'll be appointing for or recommending today, which are the Maritime Advisory Board, the Historic Preservation Commission, and the Alcohol Beverage Control Board. That's great. Yep.
Mr. Chair, I'll move approval of the minutes
Oh, yeah, that's
from the
right.
last meeting.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor of approval of the minutes, please say aye.
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 Great. Minutes have been approved. So I guess we'll just make this quick. We'll leave Dick till the end since he's not here, and we'll start with from top to bottom, I guess. Is Leonard here? No, right? All right. So we'll leave that one at the end as well. So Frida, will you please come up? Great. Good friend Frida. Oh, just sit there. It's fine. Just turn on the mic. Oh, got it. All right. I got a really interesting resume. Hi, Frida. Hello. How are you? No, thank you. And first of all, so this is Frida is applied to be appointed to the Maritime Advisory Board. So first of all, I just want to thank you for stepping up and volunteering your expertise and your time. I think it's extremely important, and I think especially with this new administration, and we want to make sure that the commissions and boards are well represented and filled and have a very important and influential body in policy making and our decision ability, and so we're really grateful for that. Yeah, and thanks again for all of your help. So it's just going to be just a little conversation, just why you're interested in joining the Maritime Advisory Board and what you hope to achieve there, and then we'll open up to questions for my colleagues. Does that sound good?
Sounds good.
Great. So you just want to tell us a little bit about why you decided why you want to join?
Make sure your mic is on. Press the button.
Oh, there we go. Okay,
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. I've always been a big volunteer person and volunteer for a lot of different things because I feel that it's important to give back to your community that you get so much out of. And I've been sailing for 45 plus years, and a lot of that time I spent as an instructor, and I've been a coach at the Naval Academy for the offshore team for now about 15 years, and I'm the fleet captain we have about 30 other volunteer coaches, and I feel like the midshipmen, when they leave, they take a little bit of me with them, and not just sailing, but leadership and physical, mental, moral training. And so in the past, I've actually appeared before the Maritime Advisory Board when I was working on the Whitbread and the Volvo race stopovers here, and just to make sure that the board members were aware of everything we were planning. And so I just want to give back to my community that I feel like I get so much out of.
Yeah. Wow, that's great. Well, thank you for that. Do you have any questions?
A kind of a question, not a question. Did you say that you train the midshipmen in sailing?
I don't teach sailing, but I volunteer for the offshore sailing team, which our focus is racing and racing offshore, but we do race locally during the school year. Right now we have a team that just arrived in Maine this afternoon, and so we spend the fall and spring semesters with the team members, not only classroom training, but on the water training. We start in mid-August and go through mid-November in the fall, and then we start in mid-March and go till the 1st of May, basically, when the mid-start exams. We go on the water every day. And so we teach strategy, tactics, starts, mark roundings, just everything. But, I love young people, and we have a 30-year-old son, and so I like to stay involved and help them.
Well, thank you. I think your voice will be a valuable voice
Thank you.
to the Maritime Board. because you're an actual practitioner,
Right.
you know,
Yes.
and while that sounds strange, I don't think we have an actual practitioner such as you, so,
Well, Terry used to race. I don't know that he races
mhm.
offshore anymore, but, you know, as we've gotten on in years, I don't race offshore anymore. I retired a couple of years ago, but, you know, and I know Debbie is on the water a lot, but probably not racing, and so, but you're right. I hope to bring a fresh perspective and a voice for, everyone who lives here loves the water, and I just want to represent, you know, people that wouldn't normally have a voice on the board.
well, thank you.
You're welcome, thank you.
Yep, Rob.
Yeah, thank you for your interest in the board. So it sounds like your perspective is mostly that of a racer, sailboat racer.
I'm not a good cruiser. But like I said, we all love the water here. We've
Yeah.
lived in Eastport for almost 22 years, and I love how we've, in the past, had cabinet secretaries, you know, live on a peninsula, and we all love dogs and boats and the boatyard, you know, Bar and Grill. So, but I'm right. I drive a powerboat a lot at Navy and set race courses and run practice races for the team when we don't have other staff available. And so, but I, you know, in the past I've taught a lot of things: navigation, you know, how to plan for going offshore, what to wear, and how to eat. You know, we try to get the midshipmen to think of themselves as athletes, and they're not just students. And you have to eat properly in order to perform your duty when you're offshore. So.
How about the connection between the industry, but also water quality? Where do you see the connection
Well, I'm very
there?
interested in water quality. In the past, we've had midshipmen get MRSA because of having a cut and not taking care of it when they get back. And I'm sort of the team mom, and I'm like, you need to scrub that out and go to Brigade Medical and get it checked out. But I've seen a big difference in the water. I don't let my dogs swim in Back Creek anymore, like we used to, and seen a big change in the water quality when I was racing. I raced privately with a civilian team for about, I don't know, 17 years or so here, and you could always see the runoff come down from the Susquehanna River when the floodgates were open, and you know, so that's very important to me. It affects our daily lives, and we live across from the Eastport Sail Loft development, and when they first started, there wasn't runoff mitigation efforts very, very productively there, and we would take pictures and send pictures in because all that runoff and sediment goes into the bay, and so I'm very concerned about that. I don't know if you read through my CV, but in 2003, off and on till about 2006, I was a maritime liaison for the city under Mike Myron in Economic Development Office, and my efforts were to promote the maritime industry and bring regattas and international events here, which are economic engine for the city. So I would like to do whatever I can to promote the maritime industry, and I'm friends with pretty much everyone who owns a sail loft in town and a maritime business, so I would like to do whatever I could to help them as well. I've seen them struggle. Things are good now, but that may not always be like that.
Well, thank you. It's good to hear. That's one thing I would like to try to do, I guess, what I can to strengthen that connection between, you know, the economic aspect
Yep.
of the Maritime Advisory Board, but also that with make that
Exactly.
connection with the water quality, because I feel like that
Exactly.
could definitely be strengthened right now on that board. Are you familiar with the no discharge zone effort? Have you
NDZ,
made
yes,
up
I
your
am.
mind one way or another? Are you,
You know, I would like to see no discharge at all in the bay. It just, I know there are plenty of places where you can go get pumped out, and I just think, you know, it's a small estuary as opposed to the ocean and everything, and So we're very careful, when we take the mids out, we don't let them throw a Kleenex overboard, you know, much less anything else. So, I would like to see Annapolis, Severn River, Spot Creek, everywhere, including the bay, if that were ever to happen, be a no discharge zone.
Thank you.
Great, thanks. And I just want to echo my colleague's comments that I think, you know, especially the Maritime Advisory Board is critical for that. And they can work together in the sense of promoting the marine industry, the environment, water quality, and access, better and greater access, public access to the water. So I think we're going to be lucky to have you serve on that and bring that perspective. Again, I think oftentimes they're seen as competing, but I think we can actually work, you know,
We're in this together.
Yeah.
Sure, absolutely.
Well, that's great. Is there anything else you want to say?
No, I don't think so. Thank you, though. Thanks for this
Which
opportunity.
ward do you live in?
Ward 8.
Okay, all right.
Mr. Chair, I'll move that we give a favorable recommendation to Mrs.
Wildy.
Wildy, to the Maritime Advisory Board.
Second.
All in favor of giving a favorable recommendation to Ms. Wildley to the Maritime Advisory Board, please say aye.
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 Aye. Well,
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank
See you soon.
You
ne-
know, go ahead.
Next up, we have my favorite Ward 5 constituent, Will Scott.
You know, when you pull that up, that's not the most recent one.
Oh, okay, I did, yeah,
That's why that, yeah, because that guy's not on
Got
ours.
it.
The guy that was
Leonard.
pulled off.
I guess, yeah. Hi, Will. Good afternoon, how are you? Great. Well, thanks. I have the honor of being Mr. Scott's alderman, but also really privileged to call him a dear friend. So thank you for everything you do for the community already, and this is just another step. You keep me in check. Do you just want to talk a little bit about why you wanted to apply to the Historic Preservation Commission and what you aim to bring to it?
Mr. Scott, would you turn your mic on, please?
Is it on? Yeah. Right.
They're saying that it's
Ah.
not on.
It looked like it was on, but it wasn't. Sorry. Well, actually, this is a 38-year-old ambition of mine. When I came to Annapolis with my wife in 1979, we had already become familiar with the city and chose to move here mostly because of her job, but we could have lived other places in the area. And part of my interest in Annapolis was its historic character, being a historian of American art, professional trained art historian. But more to the point, I began running with the Annapolis Striders in 1980 and met former Mayor Dick Hillman. And when I learned about the various commissions and ways you could serve your community, I asked him if he would consider appointing me to the Historic Preservation Commission. And he said, literally, this is a close paraphrase, we've got people lined up to serve on that commission, but we can't get people to serve on the Planning Commission. Would you do that? And I said, well, sure, you know, if I can serve the community. And I sent in my resume, and 30 years later, I was still serving on the Planning Commission. So I retired from that in 2014, and I've stayed very involved in the community. I've just finished 2 years as the president of the board of the County Arts Council. I've served on the board of the Mitchell, Friends of the Mitchell Gallery, on the Maryland Federation of Art. You know, I try to be a contributing member of the community. But I was finally motivated to do this after talking with Mayor Buckley, but also because my wife thought that I could do something more productive with Thursday evenings rather than watching the Orioles continue to lose. So that was
good.
the final push.
Well, that's good. I'm glad in this effort we're also making Sienna happy.
Yeah, so I think you saw in my forms that I've begun giving tours in a collaborative project with Historic Annapolis and Watermark Tours. So I give walking tours of Historic Annapolis, and that gives me the opportunity not just to appreciate and share my appreciation with other people, but to see how they respond and see what that does mean to people and the way that they view our city and its historical significance.
Great. Well, thank you for stepping up again for something so important. Questions from colleagues?
No, my only comment is, thank you for stepping up again.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you for saying that.
Yeah, no, thank you. It seems like your combination of your art and history background really is going to fit very well on the planning commission. I mean, on the historic preservation commission. But you know, it's interesting. You're jumping from one heavy hitter board to another one. So you.
Well, one reason that I thought that I might be useful to the city again is that I have served for so long on a commission where there's a lot of give and take and a lot of strong opinions. And I feel that one of my personal qualities that makes me successful in serving on boards like this is that I try to hear everybody's opinion openly and fairly, and to then search for the facts that should be the basis for decision making. Emotions are important and they're part of our human character, but we can't simply decide important issues based on people's strength of feeling about them. So, you know, I think my experience, I've had a 4-year break from that. Believe it or not, serving in art leadership positions can be frustrating in the sense that there is some justification to the feeling many people have that artists can be flighty and, you know, dramatic and emotional. We're not all like that. In fact, now I'm a working photographer. But working with those kinds of groups is not usually as intense as serving on the Planning Commission or the Historic Preservation Commission. So I feel like I've had a little breather and I can take it back on.
Great.
Okay.
Any comments, questions?
You know, I guess one thing that I'm kind of interested in from the Historic Preservation Commission taking on is and as an environmentalist, looking at how to bring in green technologies that will still be compliant and meet the historic character. You know, for example, solar panels or wind turbines.
Well, I think
there's
that
also concern about windows, about energy efficient windows in the
right.
historic district.
My understanding at the moment of what's possible with technology and the way it intersects with historic preservation is that there have been so many advances made. Solar panels are smaller and higher in efficiency. They can be more easily hidden so that they don't affect the primary street facades, which the historic preservation ordinance is most concerned with, and that even where windows and doors and things like that, it requires a little more investment sometimes, but it's still possible to be more energy efficient and maintain the historical character that we want to maintain in the district. So I think that the Planning Commission probably has a much greater opportunity to impact that overall, but I certainly, as a Planning Commissioner, got a lot of exposure to how much can be done at a reasonable cost that in the long term benefits us all, even financially, to the people who are paying the bills. You know, if they just dig a little harder, make a little more effort in terms of research and preparation, they in the end financially are sometimes benefited rather than harmed, and we as the community are almost always benefited. You know, cleaner air, lower energy consumption and all that.
Great. Well, thank you.
Mr. Chair, I'll move that we give a favorable recommendation to Mr. Scott for the Historic Preservation Commission.
A second?
All in favor of recommending favorably Mr. Scott for the Historic Preservation Commission, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for your vote of confidence and giving me the opportunity to talk with all of you today. I look forward to seeing more of you.
Sounds good. Next up, we have Ms. Carol Kelly.
Thank you
Hi, Carol.
for inviting me forward.
first, thank you for coming and thank you for, stepping up and continue to serve. I know you served Annapolis and the community really well for an important amount of time, and so thank you for stepping up for this important commission. Do you want to talk a little bit about why your interest in being a commissioner in the Historic Preservation Commission and what you hope to bring?
Certainly. My interest in preservation and historic architecture is lifelong. It entered into my professional life about 30 years ago, so that I actually worked close to historic sites as part of the whole organization of sites in the National Park Service. And I came to Annapolis in that mode as well. I worked for the National Park Service when I first came to Annapolis almost 20 years ago, and I was invited or appointed to take a job with the Chesapeake Bay program. The Chesapeake Bay program is the lesser known of the two organizations in town that are so concerned with the stewardship of the bay. But it is certainly an important one because it is a conglomeration of federal agencies that in its better years were doing a very good job of distributing funding and carrying out policies for the stewardship of the entire Chesapeake Bay. The headquarters is and still is in Annapolis. That collection of federal agencies includes the National Park Service, which was primarily designated to carry out the educational component of the whole stewardship effort. So I came into that position as a policy maker, as a policy analyst. I had trained for that, I had studied for that in New York when I was a park ranger. I found that even though I had developed a lot of knowledge and interest in policy making, that my heart has always been in the field, so to speak, with the buildings and the sites and the art and the architecture that certainly the National Park Service is involved with. So I only spent a year trying to make policy at a desk and went back to being a park ranger in Washington on the National Mall. So my engagement has continued, and also into the last decade, because I retired from the Park Service about 10 years ago and came to Annapolis where I had settled already to stay home, but discovered that living on a retirement income was not all that comfortable as it had been to live on one as a working person, so I went back to work. I was very fortunate to acquire what was a fairly humble position initially as a housekeeper at the Chase Lloyd House, the Chase home. And that was certainly right up my alley because it's an 18th century mansion that houses that facility, and I was able to clean initially a very beautiful and a very significant historic site. I've since become the manager of that operation, which takes me out of the direct interaction with the history and the architecture of the home somewhat. I managed to keep my fingers in that aspect of what we do there as well. So as you can probably tell just from my talking about these wonderful jobs and opportunities I've had in my professional life, I am devoted to the study of historic architecture and the preservation of old buildings. I'm also very strongly committed personally to the idea of public service. I task myself to carry it out, and I'm very appreciative of people around me in all areas who also make that commitment to doing things for the community to give back. The interest, which has not been an interest that has produced a degree for me. I don't have any credentials in historic architecture, although I've taken courses over the years. But I'm an avid reader and observer of buildings and the history of them. So I know a fair amount about old buildings and new buildings, and feel that I can use that understanding in what would be a fair and impartial effort on my part to evaluate the preservation of buildings in Annapolis. Particularly because coming to Annapolis was specifically to engage in preservation as well as recreation and history. I feel that this is a continuation of my original commitment and decision to move to Annapolis. A move I have never regretted.
Great, thank you. I think your passion and especially your experience managing a National Historic Landmark here in Annapolis is significant. So thank you again. I'll open up to questions, comments.
Well, just a comment, you are a park ranger.
I was a park ranger. And do you really want me to sort of almost knock you off your chair? I think Mark may know this. I know that your friend does. But in the 10 years that I first worked in the Park Service, I lived at the Statue of Liberty. There is a small, no longer occupied collection of houses, 1950s bungalow sort of houses and a couple of duplexes. And for decades, they have housed employees, usually seasonal employees, who are willing to stay on an island and live their life there while they work at the statue or at Ellis Island. So I lived at the Statue of Liberty while I was a park ranger, primarily, almost entirely at Ellis Island. So my focus in that history was on immigration history. But and it is in many ways a very much appreciated aspect of the Park Service and rangers, but it's also little known, I think, to some extent. That park rangers are very serious historians. In cases where they are most engaged in history, they become very knowledgeable about sites, so architecture is something that they are familiar with, and certainly in terms of the environment and the preservation, the importance of what we all are surrounded by environmentally. Park rangers are some of the best people in the country for that matter. So yes, I had a hat
Incredible.
in the whole thing.
Well, thank you for wanting to continue to serve, because I know you're on the transportation
I am.
now. So,
Thank you.
so thank you.
Mr. Chair? Yeah, so thank you for your interest, and I do really like your interpretive background. I think that could potentially be, of quite a bit of use to the commission, in the sense that you could help to educate and reach out to some of the, not just the applicants, but maybe even proactively reach out to the community. And I just think that the educational kind of perspective would, I think, would certainly be helpful.
Thank you for that. That's not something that I had actually thought of, but it gives me it does immediately make me aware that I can use my skill as an interpreter, as a tour guide, so to speak, as somebody who shares her passion for the field, is pretty well developed, and I would certainly like to use it in that way at the appropriate times.
So you are presumably, have you resigned from the transportation?
I assume I will have to. If I don't have to, I have been very committed to the Transportation Board and would continue to do so if it were legal or possible.
I don't know.
But we'll check.
Okay, but yes, you can only serve on one commission.
Then I would choose a piece.
Okay.
You need to speak into a mic.
A board or commission member can only serve on one.
Well, this is being recorded, remember.
A board or commission member can only serve on one at any given time. And so Ms. Kelly will be leaving the Transportation Board and will be replaced on the Transportation Board in the next round of appointments.
Thank you, Mr. Rao.
Thank you. Thank you. Oh, you're finished?
I'm finished, thank you.
Then I will move that we give Ms. Kelly a favorable recommendation for the Historic Preservation Commission.
Second?
Those in favor of giving a favorable recommendation to Ms. Kelly to be appointed to the Historic Preservation Commission, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Can we,
Baskerville.
Baskerville. Could we, Ms. Baskerville? Could you please come up? Thank you.
Okay, we have 10 minutes.
10 minutes? Okay. Hi, how are you?
Hi, I'm great. How are you?
Great.
Good.
I wanted to ask so many questions about your career at CBS. No.
You're
Conversation
certainly
between-
welcome.
Yeah, no, that's great. Well, first of all, again, thank you for stepping up and volunteering your time and your experience and expertise. So, am I pronouncing correctly, Ms. Baskerville?
Yes, that's correct.
Ms. Baskerville's seeking appointment to the Alcohol Beverage Control Board. Do you want to tell us a little bit about your interest in that and what do you think you'll bring to the table?
I will be honest with you. If you asked me 6 to 8 months ago if I would be here, I had no idea until the mayor was running, and he came to our neighborhood, and he came along with Brian Callahan, and Brian just recommended this board position to me, and I'd never even given it a thought. But I've lived in Annapolis for 15 plus years, and I'm amazed. I never thought I would live here. This is a city that imbibes beauty and elegance and history, and I love living here, and I'm doing my best to not ever leave now. And I feel like I've gotten to the point in my life to where it's time for me to give back, not just in my role at work, but you know, to society as a whole. I've lived a very storied career, and I feel like there's got to be something that I can bring to the table. And Brian recommended this particular board primarily because there was not anyone from Ward 7 on the committee. And I gave it some thought, and here I am. Yeah. And I'm very proud to serve. I have not been able to volunteer in a capacity like this, I would say, ever. And I've just gotten to that point in my life to where I have to give back.
Okay. Oh, well, thank you again for stepping up.
I guess I have a question, but I'm not sure it's a question. You bring to the table a great deal of journalism is your background. Our ABC board, Alcohol Beverage Board, is sometimes a very contentious board. We have had bar wars over the years as to what time bars should be opened and how we handle infractions and things like that. So have you done any looking into what the responsibilities are?
I will be honest with you. I have not specifically, but, and I'm not going to sit here and make excuses. I mean, you know, I am definitely in the throes of a midlife crisis, I would say, personally and professionally. Mm-hmm. But now, recently, having the time, I recently left CBS News after 23 years, and it was, it feels like a divorce that I've never been through. Mm-hmm. But I will be honest with you, the one thing that has helped me get through the last month is this city. And I have actually spent more time downtown with patrons, whether they're visitors or local to the community. I have spent time with people who are enjoying our establishments. I don't play favors. I'm never going to play favors. Mm-hmm. I will be honest with you. I think I have a pretty good idea of what I'm getting into. I have not been able to read, through the weeds on it, but just given my experience in dealing with very contentious situations every day, I don't back down from a fight, but I'm also very considerate of my surroundings and who I'm with and how things are to be done. I like to follow the rules. I'm the kind of person that believes that there is actually a gray area. It's not just black and white, but what I think I can bring to the table is skillful tactics and reasoning, and just plain common sense.
Great. Yeah, sorry.
Go ahead.
Yeah, that's really, I love that you said that because I think the ABC especially, like I said, can get very contentious and maybe not necessarily when approving kind of one day or special event licenses, but when it comes to approving a liquor license, whether it's a midnight or to 2 a.m., depending on the area, the community, it can get very, very contentious. And then balancing that with the importance of granting liquor licenses to restaurants, to bars, so that they can succeed as businesses as well. So that balance is extremely important to address from a very objective lens.
I think being considerate of individuals who live in neighborhoods around Annapolis, 100%, I understand that. The other half of it is, yes, there are businesses that need to be run. Within reason, those businesses should be allowed to operate until certain times. I mean, it's just, you know, it's not brain surgery. It's just respect and being considerate. And that is something I've always pride myself in. It's just, you know, it's not something you really lose. I was taught that, and I will remain to be that person who can make those kind of judgments.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for stepping up.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Baskerville. So I do want to say I've gotten to know Ms. Baskerville for about over a year now, I guess. And we first got to know her over talking about a community issue. And because you've been involved with your community association, correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
I was the vice president for 3 years.
So, and I've also gotten to know you a little bit as well over the past few months. And I can say from my dealings with you, I've been greatly impressed with just how genuine you are, how kind you are to people in your community. Everybody just had something positive to say about you. And also just, I do want to speak for your character and your integrity. I feel like you are a high quality person and will serve very well on this board. So
I look forward to it. I want to be of any help to this community and this city that I can. And if you ever need, I just want to put this on record, if you ever need a manager of diversity and inclusion or something like that for the entire city or / event planner, I'm available.
We're going to send you to the police department.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I will move that we give a favorable recommendation to Mrs. Baskerville for the Alcohol Beverage Control Board.
Second.
All in favor of giving a favorable recommendation to Ms. Baskerville to the Alcohol Beverage Control Board, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think we have
we gonna-
one more. Dick Peterson, I think, and Will Rao will sit in for him. So this is for the appointment of Dick Peterson to the Alcoholic Beverage Control Board. He couldn't be here. Mr. Will Rao will present on his behalf. I will start just by saying I know Mr. Peterson. Personally, I think he does a lot of great work for the community. I know he has a lot of background and experience in the alcohol beverage industry. And I've witnessed firsthand how he volunteers his time consistently in a lot of events supporting. He's a volunteer bartender for all the Seats for Success, for example, fundraisers. And
Right.
He does a great job. Very
That
responsible.
qualifies him for the
That
Alcohol
qualifies.
Beverage Board.
Right.
But do you want to say a little bit on Mr. Peterson's behalf?
I will say this, he's, for those of you that know him, he's pretty straightforward with things. And very early on, he, unlike some others where you have to kind of help them pick the way that they're going to serve, he was, from the beginning, he was like, I really want to be involved in this. And we had several conversations about his interest and why he was interested. And similar to what you just went through with Miss Baskerville, I made sure that the interest of those who want to serve on these kind of boards that have, decisions about permits and such, it's very important that they don't have ulterior motives or that they have, a bone to pick or, something to prove. And that's one of the things that impressed me about Mr. Peterson is that he does have experience in the wine and beer industry, but he also wants to actually use and share that experience because of his observation from being at these meetings and actually sitting before ABC. So I thought that was an interesting vantage point that he would have were he on this particular board. So,
Great, great.
yeah.
Do you think there's going to be a conflict of interest at any time because of his previous employment with the liquor industry?
That was the first thing I asked him, and actually the second thing that I talked to the mayor about, because that's what jumped out to me. But most of his involvement with the liquor industry is in the past, so it's no longer in the same capacity at all. I do know that he does events and works as bartender and kind of does that. So we do need to be sure that, first of all, ethics training, which in my capacity on behalf of you all, it's something that's in the works that needs to happen, to be sure that it's very clear that if there's any conflicts of interest, that is in violation of anyone serving on a board or commission. And then from the law office, Richard Melnick and I have talked about a specific training for each board and commission, especially those that have kind of quasi-judicial activities and functions, that they go through a strenuous training also. So my hope is that as he moves onto the board, were you all to recommend him, he would understand very clearly what his boundaries are in terms of dealing with alcohol businesses and establishments.
Thank you.
But he has not worked for a restaurant or bar as an employee in the city, so he's worked in the industry. So,
Do you know if he has any other financial interest in
no,
the industry right now?
no, because that was a part of that first question that I asked him, is to find out, why, having that background, why do you now want to be on the board? And he told me no.
Okay, Mr. Chair, then I will move that we give a favorable recommendation to Mr. Peterson for the Alcohol Beverage Control Board.
I'll second.
So, all those in favor of giving a favorable recommendation to Mr. Peterson to the Alcoholic Beverage Control Board, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Although I do have to question his one reference, Mr. Arnett from,
And Mr. Roper and Ms. Lawrence, it doesn't get any better than that in Ward 8.
Right.
Mr. Chair, I'll move to adjourn.
second.
All in favor of adjourning?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, everyone.